Before you hand in your resignation and head off into retirement, there are a few critical boxes you need to tick. And I'm not just talking about how much money you've got in super, I'm talking about everything from tax traps to aged care planning. In this video, I'll walk you through the complete Australian retirement checklist, the same one I use with many of my own clients to help you retire with clarity and confidence. Now, there are 10 key steps you should be taking if you're planning for retirement or already retired, and I'm going to go through these one at a time in this video. The first one is setting your retirement timeline. Now, the questions here you need to ask yourself are, when do you want to hang up the boots? When do you want to give up work? Have you chosen what your ideal retirement age could be? A lot of people have to retire because of health reasons, or a lot of people, in fact, work longer than they need to because they're not aware of how much income they could produce from the assets that they've already accumulated. And then once you've worked out when you plan to retire, is there a gap between then and when you can access your super? For most people, that's either 60 or 65. So you need to work out what asset you'll have to fund your retirement once you stop working full time. Do you even intend to stop working full time, or do you have the option to transition to retirement by having part-time work, or alternatively taking on casual work once you leave your current job? Now, there are 3 important ages you need to know when you're building your retirement timeline. They are 60, 65, and 67, but there is no retirement age per se. Now, 60 and 65 are related to superannuation and when you can access your accumulated assets, and 67 is related to the age pension and when you can become eligible to apply for that. Now, once you know your date and when your retirement timeline is going to start, you can then check if you're on track or if you need to be saving more. And most importantly, with the help of an advisor, you can work out what the trade-offs you need to be making today to be able to achieve that goal in the future. The second point I want to talk about is you need to know your retirement income needs. Have you estimated your yearly spending in retirement? What do other people spend is a question I often get. And in a lot of cases, the base level of spending is between $60,000 and $80,000. But on top of that, you need to add things like travel if you plan to enjoy your retirement early on, and new car purchases, renovations, all these additional expenses that come up. Have you also accounted for the shift between the golden, silver, and legacy years that happens? Most people assume that their income and their expenses are going to remain the same throughout retirement, but we can tell you firsthand, having advised thousands of clients over 20 years, that your expenses will change significantly. And that's why we've simplified that into the golden, silver, and legacy years, which kick in at different parts of your retirement. I think the key here is that there are some things that will go into your expenses and some things will go out. Some are simple: school fees, mortgage repayments, investment loans, and there are other things that will pop in, like more coffees out during the day because you have more time, or subscriptions and fees to go to all kinds of different hobbies or events that you now have the time to enjoy. The key here is that how do you know which will continue and how do you plan for the future? Understanding what you've spent in the past and also understanding how that may change in the future. This is central to any conversation when you're starting to plan for retirement. Now, the next one is all about superannuation planning. Do you know your current super balance? Have you consolidated your super funds? As this could be costing you money in fees that are much higher for smaller balances in most superannuation funds. Also, have you reviewed your investment strategy within super? Are you high growth? Are you in a conservative fund? And is this aligned to your needs, the income expectations that you have in retirement, and your broader objectives as the way you want to enjoy your retirement? And when we link to this, we have to talk about the fact that the divergence and the dispersion in superannuation returns has increased significantly in the last 5 years, to the point that no super fund is consistently at the top of the pile. So a key here is constantly reviewing, going back and looking at the performance of your super fund compared to the index or the benchmark, so the average, but also compared to all the other alternatives that are out there, and determine if it's still appropriate for you. Are you also aware of the taxes that might apply? There's Division 293 and now potentially Division 296 that will come into force at some point in the next few years for those with balances over $3 million. And finally, do you have a plan for transitioning into pension phase? Do you plan to stop work immediately and start drawing your pension from your retirement income from your superannuation balance? Or do you plan to step in slowly? Are you going to continue work? All these are important questions. The answer to many of them, though, and what we know, is that superannuation is by far the best structure for your retirement income. It does have some restrictions though. So if you want to retire before 60, you're going to have to manage accessibility, but also the contribution limits and the caps, and that's non-concessional contributions and concessional contributions. Among the biggest killers of super fund returns are fees and constantly moving in and out of market. So this is also something we need to be aware of. And obviously one point here is to make sure you go and inform yourself of how tax works in superannuation and what your options are once you leave work or reduce your working hours. There are a lot of people that work that have the benefit of defined benefit lump sums or defined benefit superannuation accounts, and important to understand how they work and what your after-tax outcome will be should you decide to retire. The fourth issue I want to talk about is that you need to look at your other income sources and get track of them. Do you expect to receive the age pension? And when do you expect to receive it? If you've got over $800 to $900 to $1 million in assets and you've turned 67, in a lot of cases you may not be accessible for it. But then at the same time, you may be able to get the Commonwealth Seniors Healthcare Card, depending on what your income and assets look like. The other one is, have you reviewed the dividend yields that you have and the income you're receiving from the other assets in your portfolio? If you're holding term deposits, are they providing enough income or could they be invested more appropriately? We covered in another video the fact that by taking slightly more risk in your superannuation or your retirement assets, you may be able to extend the longevity of those assets and ensure that the assets outlast you rather than the other way around. Other big questions we have to ask is, does an investment property still work for retirees when much of these are either neutrally or negatively geared, meaning you have to put money into them and they provide a tax deduction? Or could this money be better held in super? The key is understanding what you're missing out on by holding the assets that you currently do and having a fresh piece of paper to then look forward into how you should be investing and generating that passive income in retirement. The fifth step is understanding and putting in place a withdrawal strategy. So we do know that there are minimum legislated amounts that you need to draw from your superannuation retirement income stream, but this doesn't mean that's all you can draw, and it doesn't mean that's all you should draw. What you need to do is work out a safe retirement withdrawal plan that is linked to the amount of income that you need, but also the level of capital that you have and how long that's going to last. And importantly, this leads to something as well, which is talking about the 4% rule. So Americans are widely known as using the 4% rule, that a sustainable drawdown can be as much as 4% of your portfolio every year in perpetuity if you want that capital to last forever. Other rules have been used as well, such as the 1/15th or 6.5% rule, which applies a similar rule of thumb, but assumes a higher level of return. One of the big keys here is you may have a safe withdrawal plan, but have you managed and have you planned for sequencing risk? That is the sequence of returns that occur once you retire and start relying on that finite pool of capital to generate an income for the rest of your retirement. What are you going to do if the day you retire and you invest into the market, share markets and investments fall by 20, 30, 40%, as they have at various points in the last 30, 40, 50 years and going back further than that? Do you have a cash buffer that can help protect you from that? And what is your retirement number? What number do you need in the bank to make you feel comfortable? Your super fund is all yours once you meet that conditional release, but you need to understand how you're going to access it and what the best way to be investing it, given your expected income and the drawdowns you plan to make. And I guess a big one here, and we don't often talk about it, is what do you do if you need more money? And this is where an advisor can help talk about the choices and trade-offs that you have. If you don't have enough capital in retirement, you're likely to run out sooner. You may be able to just work an extra year or two and completely change the trajectory of your retirement. Or alternatively, you might have large assets that aren't providing an income, including your family home, and it may be better to downsize it and then have more flexibility and a higher level of income that you might be able to enjoy as opposed to the larger house, which in many cases can be an empty nest. The sixth area that we always check off is the debt and expense review. So have you paid off your mortgage or are you planning to? Do you have any large upcoming expenses? Are you planning to renovate the house, provide gifts to the children, the old bank of mum and dad, or pay for weddings? And have you cut off any unnecessary subscriptions, expenses, and all these other things that get lost as we just enjoy life or are working so much in the lead up to retirement? And mortgages are deadly in retirement. They're wasted money and you get a guaranteed return by paying them off. The guaranteed return being the after-tax value of that interest rate that you're paying and the interest that you're saving. If your property rental yield is less than your interest, is this a worthy retirement investment? And do you even need leverage to meet your goals? Do you need to borrow money to meet your income objectives? Or do you have enough capital now that you can take some risk off the table and can live the same level of lifestyle with a much lower level of stress? Now, seventh is looking at your healthcare and insurance. The key here is, do you have adequate private healthcare insurance in place at the moment? How do you ensure that you're not going to be subject to extended waiting lists and you can't get the surgery that you want when you need it? And this is happening in a period in a country where retirement is lasting anywhere from 20 to 30 to 35 years. Have you considered the potential costs of aged care in the future? Now, in a lot of cases, you don't necessarily have to sell all of your assets to get into aged care. You do have several options, and you need to price this in and consider this when you're looking at the trajectory of your expenses in the future. And finally, have you reviewed your life, TPD and income protection policies as you get closer to 65? These get incredibly expensive and in a lot of cases they may not actually be adding much benefit to you anymore. At this point of your life, we always do a cost-benefit analysis of the benefit of retaining that insurance, given it is term insurance, you're only getting 12 months worth of cover, and the increase in cost. In most cases, we're looking to insure for a debt repayment or alternatively to provide an income to your loved ones, but this is more valuable when you're younger. So I think the key here is understanding what you're insuring and whether you still need that insurance in place. Eighth, one of the first questions we ask is around estate and legal planning. Do you have an up-to-date will? It can be incredibly costly for you and stressful for your family if you don't have an up-to-date will in place. Do you also have an enduring power of attorney, both financial and medical, in place to ensure that medical decisions and financial decisions can be made if you're no longer able to make those decisions yourself? And in an age where, unfortunately, things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's are getting more prevalent, these documents become incredibly important and assist and provide a lot of assistance to your family should something happen in the future. And have you considered how to pass your wealth effectively? So one thing here we talk about is looking at the benefit of testamentary trusts or family trusts for those with larger asset bases, and the role that testamentary trusts can play in both asset protection and tax control should you have several children and your beneficiaries are more than just your wife. So if it goes to your children and then your grandchildren as well. The benefit being that you're able to maintain these assets and reduce tax as much as payable, so there's more to pass on to future generations, which we know is incredibly important to many people that we talk to. Ninth and second last is lifestyle and emotional planning. And no one can really help you completely with this. You need to take care of this yourself. But have you planned how you spend your time in retirement? Are you mentally prepared to stop working? We all tend to get a lot of purpose from the work that we do. What's going to happen if that just switches off overnight? Have you discussed your plans with your family and friends? Now, retirement is different for everyone. Incredibly challenging, and the big question is, will you be okay? You need to have in place hobbies, interests, friendship groups, and importantly, great health. And is there anyone else you can talk to that has gone through the same process or alternatively planning on going through the same process? Now, the final one, and this is where someone like Withdrawal Partners can come in, is bringing all this together. There are always concerns about the cost of financial advice, but we ask the question, can you afford to do it yourself? If you get any of these things wrong, and this is only a very short checklist, then the cost could be incredibly significant and much more than cost you would ever pay for financial advice. So some of the things we look to do and we think are incredibly important are looking at, have you had a retirement projection done? Do you understand how long your capital is going to last based on different return or different risk profiles or different levels of investments that you're going to hold? And have you reviewed your investment recently? Are you exposed to investments that are higher risk that you don't necessarily need or shouldn't be invested in now that you have a finite pool of capital? You need to protect that. And one of the things we have always valued is the ability to put resilience into portfolios and to have resilience in that passive income that's going to be produced. One of the most common questions is around the ongoing advice and the ongoing support that comes with managing superannuation, dealing with contribution limits, dealing with pensions, and the one-off advice that a lot of people think they can accept, execute, and will be completely fine executing themselves. And as we know, the superannuation system in Australia is incredibly complicated. And I always ask the question, is one-off advice going to be enough to guide you through what will be a complex, stressful, and in many cases very difficult period, but hopefully a very positive one? So as always, thanks for listening. Please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and feel free to send through if you have any questions.